Ethan sat behind the wheel of his polished SUV, but today there was no rush. The soft morning sunlight filtered through the roadside trees, illuminating the narrow dirt road he had just driven down. Squinting slightly, he fixed his gaze on the small, weathered house by the road, a place he believed held the answers to the whirlwind of emotions he had been grappling with since yesterday. Taking a deep breath, he turned off the engine, stepped out, and closed the car door behind him. The gravel beneath his feet crunched with each step, every sound echoing the weight of his mixed feelings, unease and determination intertwined. The door creaked open as Ethan knocked. A middle-aged woman appeared, holding a dish towel in one hand. Her expression was a blend of surprise and caution as she studied the unexpected visitor. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for Mason," Ethan said, his voice steady and sincere. "The boy who helped me yesterday. I wanted to thank him." A voice called out from inside, and moments later, Mason appeared. The boy looked up at Ethan, his bright eyes wide with curiosity. "You came to see me?" Mason asked, his face lit up with astonishment. "Yes, I did. And I'm not just here to say thank you. I want to help you and your family, just like you helped me." To continue uncovering this heartwarming story, click the follow or subscribe button so you won't miss what happens next. This story not only changed the way Ethan viewed life, but could also transform the way you perceived kindness and generosity. Let's dive deeper into what unfolded after this moment and discover why Mason became such a profound source of inspiration.
Ethan sat behind the wheel of the SUV, tapping his fingers rhythmically on the steering wheel. The road stretched out before him, barren, flanked by tall grasses swaying in the summer heat. He glanced at the clock, muttering under his breath. He had an important meeting in less than an hour. But as the car sped down the narrow country road, a sudden loud crash echoed, followed by the unmistakable thump, thump, thump sound of a flat tire. "Perfect," he muttered, his voice filled with frustration. He sighed, pulling the car over to the side of the road. His luxury vehicle kicked up a cloud of dust. The heat hit him like a wave as he stepped out of the car. He grimaced, adjusting his jacket and loosening his tie. Ethan knelt beside the tire, clearly shredded, pieces of rubber flaking off. He looked down the empty road and then at his phone. No signal. He cursed under his breath, slipping the phone back into his pocket. He stared at the tire, feeling utterly helpless. He had never had to change a tire himself. In his world, there was always someone else to take care of these things, an assistant, a driver, a service team. But here, on this desolate road with no phone signal, it was just him, the broken SUV, and the sweltering heat. His heart raced, sweat pouring down, and he felt a simmering anger build inside of him.
Ethan's thoughts suddenly drifted back to a distant time, when he was young. He had found himself in a similar situation, lost and in need of help. He remembered the faces of those who had ignored him then, the eyes that avoided meeting his. The bitter feeling lingered, one of the reasons he hated relying on others. He shook his head, trying to shake off the memory. The sun blazed down more fiercely, the road ahead shimmering under the harsh sunlight, and the tension in his chest grew. The sky was clear, and the closest sign of life seemed miles away. He had to find a solution before nightfall. Suddenly, Ethan squinted. There was something, or more precisely someone, moving toward him. A figure appeared on the horizon, becoming clearer with each step. He straightened up, trying to make out the figure. It was a boy, no older than 15, wearing a faded t-shirt and a pair of old sneakers. As the boy approached, Ethan could see the determination on his face. "Hey, is your car broken down?" the boy called out, stopping a few steps away from the SUV. The boy stared directly at Ethan, his eyes clear and curious. Ethan hesitated. He felt a strange mix of relief and caution. "Yeah, the tire's flat, and I have no idea how to fix it," the boy nodded, stepping closer. He glanced at the shredded tire, then back at Ethan. "I can do it, sir. My dad taught me how." The boy knelt down, examining the tire. "Wait for me a sec. I'll grab the spare tire." Ethan frowned. Are, are you sure you can do it?" He stared at the boy. The boy seemed so confident, but Ethan wasn't used to relying on strangers, especially not a kid. The boy looked up and smiled gently. "Yeah, it's just a tire, no big deal." The boy stood up, brushing the dust off his knees. "The spare's usually under the back of the car."
Ethan nodded briefly, still uneasy, but with no other option. He stepped aside, watching the boy confidently walk toward the back of the SUV. The boy opened the trunk, found the tools and the spare tire, and without hesitation, Ethan stood there, unsure of what to do with his hands. He looked down at the boy, who had already started removing the wheel nuts. The wrench went up and down rhythmically, making the unmistakable clink-clink sound. "Are you really doing this?" Ethan muttered to himself. He felt sweat beginning to bead on his back, a combination of the heat and the unease he felt in this situation. The boy worked quickly, oblivious to the dirt and the weight of the tire. After a while he looked up, his forehead damp with sweat. "Are you okay, sir? You look a little pale." Ethan snorted, adjusting his jacket. "I'm fine, just not used to this." The boy smiled, and Ethan couldn't help but notice how sincere the smile was. "It's nothing, sir. Just knowing what to look for and doing it." Ethan remained silent, watching as the boy finished installing the spare tire. The boy worked quickly, tightening the bolts and finally standing up, wiping his hands on his jeans. He stepped back and gave Ethan a thumbs up. "All done!" Ethan blinked, as if he couldn't believe it. He pulled out his wallet, taking out a few bills and offering them to the boy. "Thank you. This is for you." The boy shook his head, stepping back immediately. "No need, sir. I just wanted to help you out. You looked like you needed it." Ethan frowned, holding the money in his hand, awkwardly letting it drop by his side. No, take it. Please." But the boy just smiled, shook his head, and waved as he turned to leave. "Take care, sir. I hope everything goes well for you." Ethan stood there, stunned, watching the boy disappear down the road, the money still in his hand. He stood there for a while, then sighed. The feeling of unease hadn't gone away. It had only grown. He wasn't used to this, a simple favor without any expectation of repayment. He returned to the SUV, put the money back in his wallet and got into the driver's seat, starting the engine. He found himself glancing at the rearview mirror, watching the boy get smaller and smaller until he was completely out of sight. Ethan drove on, but his mind couldn't settle. There was something about that encounter that he couldn't shake off, a feeling of discomfort, a sense that something wasn't right. He clenched his jaw, focusing on the road ahead, trying to push those thoughts away, but they lingered, even as he left the desolate road behind. Ethan's mind kept replaying the encounter as he drove, constantly rewinding that moment. The boy's smile, the way he refused the money, the words, "Take care, sir," spoken over his shoulder. It felt strange, not because of the boy's actions, but because of his own reaction. He wasn't used to not being in control, to not having the power that money and influence gave him. He turned onto the road leading to his house, the automatic gate opening as his luxury SUV rolled in. The house stood ahead, modern and sleek, a place where everything looked perfect, but cold. Ethan parked, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment, staring out the window. "Hey, you're home late," Emma, his wife, called out. Ethan jumped, looking up. She was standing in the doorway, smiling, but that smile quickly faded when she saw his expression. She walked closer, her brow furrowing with concern. "Is everything okay?" "No, nothing's wrong," Ethan quickly replied, forcing a smile. He grabbed his briefcase and stepped out of the car, slamming the door harder than he intended. "I had a little trouble on the road. Got a flat tire. A flat tire? Did you fix it?
No. He hesitated for a moment before adding, "A kid came to help you?" Emma said, raising an eyebrow, trying to sound calm. "He fixed your car without asking for anything in return?" Ethan nodded, his expression turning more serious. "He refused the money I offered him." She paused, looking at him for a moment. "That's incredible. Not many people are that kind these days." Ethan simply hummed in response as he walked into the house. He couldn't understand why her words made him feel uneasy. Maybe because she was right, or maybe because he knew he'd never be able to do something like that. Dinner was quiet. Ethan barely touched his food. Their children, Lila and Jack, chattered away about school. But their voices seemed distant, muffled, as though trapped under something heavy. Emma noticed, casting a puzzled glance at him. "Hey, what's going on with you?" she asked, resting her chin in her hand. "You've been absent ever since we got home." Ethan blinked and looked up, shaking his head. "It's nothing. I don't know," he replied, the words stuck in his throat. "The kid. I can't stop thinking about him." Lila, his daughter, looked up from her phone with curiosity. "What kid, Dad?" Ethan sighed, putting his fork down and leaning back in his chair. He'd told the kids about the boy who helped him change the tire, how he didn't take any money, acting as though it was the most normal thing in the world, and then he just walked away. Ethan rubbed his forehead, trying to understand his own frustration. He just couldn't get it. Jack, his son, smirked. "Maybe he's just a good kid, Dad." Ethan shot him a glance, but didn't reply. Emma was watching him carefully, her expression softening. "Sometimes people do good things just because they can, Ethan. Not everyone expects something in return." Ethan frowned. "Yeah, but it doesn't make sense to me. Don't people want something back?" He stood up abruptly, pushing his chair away with a squeak. "I'm going outside for some fresh air." Emma nodded slowly, watching him as he stepped out into the backyard. He stood there for a moment, his hands in his pockets, looking out at the well-kept lawn. He wanted to forget about the boy and just move on with his life. But something kept haunting him. The look in the boy's eyes, the smile when he turned to leave, as if helping someone else was the most natural thing in the world. Ethan went to bed late that night, his mind still a storm. When he climbed into bed, Emma was already asleep. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to push away the discomforting emptiness. It was just a flat tire, so why did it feel so significant? The next morning, Ethan woke up with an unusual sense of resolve. He couldn't explain why, but he needed to find that boy. He didn't know what he'd say or if the boy would even be there, but he had to try. He quickly got dressed, choosing casual clothes over his usual suit. Emma looked up from her coffee, raising an eyebrow in surprise. "Where are you going?" Ethan nodded, already by the door. "I'm going back to where my car broke down," he said, pausing before turning back to her with a small smile. "Don't wait up for me." He walked out, got in the car, and focused on the road from yesterday. He remembered it clearly, the helpless feeling when he saw the flat tire. It didn't take long for him to get to the spot, but everything seemed different today, less daunting, more familiar. He slowed down as he approached where he'd parked and stopped at the side of the road. Stepping out of the car, he could feel the sweat beginning to bead on his neck. He scanned the area, squinting, and then he saw it. A small, old house tucked beside the road. He walked toward it, feeling a strange mixture of hope and anxiety. What if he was wrong? What if this wasn't the boy's house? He tried to shake off those thoughts and kept walking. The yard was cluttered, a few rusted toys scattered around. Ethan stopped at the front step, took a deep breath, and knocked on the door. There was some rustling from inside, and then the door creaked open. A woman stood there, her eyes wide with surprise. She took in Ethan's expensive shoes, the watch on his wrist, and the determination on his face. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. Ethan spoke softly. "I'm looking for a boy, about 15 years old. He helped me fix my car yesterday." The woman's face softened, and she nodded slightly. "Are you talking about Mason?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, Mason. I want to thank him properly." The woman stepped back and called inside. "Mason, come here. Someone's looking for you." Ethan heard footsteps, and then Mason appeared, his eyes wide with surprise. "Wow, it's you!" Mason grinned brightly. Ethan took a step forward. "Mason, I've been looking for you. I can't stop thinking about what you did for me yesterday. I want to do something to thank you." Mason shook his head, the smile never leaving his face. "You don't have to. I just wanted to help you," Mason said, and Ethan looked at him, trying to grasp the sincerity and kindness in his words. It was so foreign to him, but he knew he couldn't walk away.
"I think I should do something for you, for your family," Ethan replied. Mason glanced at his mother, who gave a small nod. He turned back to Ethan, his expression thoughtful. "Well," he said slowly, "maybe there is something." Ethan felt a spark of hope. "Anything," he said quickly. "Whatever you need, just ask." Mason's smile brightened. "How about you come inside for breakfast with my family? We don't have much, but it would be nice to have you with us." Ethan blinked, surprised. He opened his mouth to speak, then stopped, nodding slowly. "All right, I'll come." The door opened wider, and Ethan stepped inside, feeling something shift within himself. He wasn't sure what it was, but maybe this was just the beginning. Ethan sat at a simple wooden table in Mason's kitchen. The small room was tidy, but old, the smell of coffee and eggs mixing in the air. Ethan fidgeted on the chair, not used to this kind of space. Everything around him felt unfamiliar. Mason sat across from him, still smiling. "So, what brought you here?" Mason asked, curiosity evident in his voice. Ethan scratched his head, considering his words. "Well, I just can't forget what happened yesterday," he said, glancing around the humble kitchen, simple curtains, cracked tile floor. "You helped me, and I wanted to thank you. I couldn't just let it go." Mason shrugged and took a sip of orange juice. "Really, it wasn't a big deal. We should help each other, right?" Ethan paused. The simplicity of Mason's words made him feel foolish. His whole life had been built on the idea that nothing comes for free. Every action has a cost, a price to pay, a hidden side. Yet here, Mason treated kindness as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Mason's mother placed a plate of food in front of Ethan, scrambled eggs and toast. "There's not much, but please eat," she said gently with a smile. Ethan looked down at the plate, then back up at her, swallowing hard. "Thank you, ma'am. This is more than enough." They ate in silence for a while, only the sound of cutlery clinking against plates. Ethan kept glancing at Mason, watching how he interacted with his mother, the warmth in his eyes. It was the complete opposite of the cold, distant atmosphere in his own family. Mason looked up and caught Ethan's gaze. "So, how does it feel to be successful?" he asked, his curiosity apparent. Ethan paused, chewing slowly. "Very busy," he finally answered. "Lots of meetings, lots of responsibilities." He looked into Mason's eyes, seeing the curiosity there. "Most people think my life is all about fancy parties, but it's actually pretty lonely." Mason nodded slowly. "I get it.
People see your fancy car and think you have it all. Ethan gave a half smile, a bitter one. Yeah, maybe they do. He looked down at his plate, pushing the eggs around. Sometimes I feel like I've lost what really matters, the things that make life worth living. Mason tilted his head, thinking. Maybe you just need a little reminder, he said, smiling again. The feeling of helping others, being there for them, it's amazing, isn't it? Ethan blinked, surprised. He put down his spoon, nodding slowly. Yeah, it really is. Mason's mother cleared her throat, breaking the quiet atmosphere. We don't have much, but we always try to help when we can. My mom taught me that, and I teach Mason the same. Ethan nodded, looking at her, then at Mason. You're doing a great job, he said sincerely. Mason's a good kid. The room fell into a comfortable silence, a feeling Ethan hadn't experienced in a long time. He leaned back in his chair, relaxing for the first time in a long while. It turned out happiness wasn't about material things, it was about the moments shared, the connections made. When the meal ended, Mason stood up, took Ethan's plate, and stacked it with his own. All right, it's done, Uncle. Are you okay now? He asked, a mischievous smile on his face. Ethan smiled faintly, shaking his head. I thought so, but... He paused, then looked directly into Mason's eyes. I really want to do something for you, for your family. Not because I owe you, but because I want to. Mason exchanged a look with his mother, who gave a small nod of encouragement. Mason turned back to Ethan, shrugging. Well, we do need a few things at home, but that's not why I helped you. Ethan smiled, feeling a weight lift off his chest. I understand, and I still want to help. I want to thank you. He stood up, extending his hand to Mason's mother. Thank you for the breakfast. It means more to me than you think. She took his hand, squeezing it tightly. You're always welcome here. We don't need expensive gifts. Just sharing a meal together is enough for us.
Ethan nodded and turned back to Mason. All right, I'll come. Maybe we can think of something meaningful together. Mason smiled, giving him a thumbs up. Of course. Just come whenever you want. Ethan stepped out of the house, the door creaking shut behind him. He took a deep breath, feeling the warm morning breeze on his face. The road stretched ahead, no longer feeling as empty as it did the day before. He got into his car, started the engine, and glanced at the house through the rearview mirror before driving off. The emptiness still lingered, but something had shifted. He had begun something today, and perhaps this was the beginning of something better. As Ethan drove home, his mind was no longer consumed by the frustration that had clouded his thoughts the day before. Instead, he found himself thinking about what Mason had said, about helping others. There was a small flicker of hope, but it was real. He turned into the driveway, the automatic gate closing behind him. As he stepped out of the car, he saw Emma standing at the door, her arms crossed, staring at him with a questioning look. Ethan smiled and walked toward her. I found the boy, he said, stopping in front of her. And I had breakfast with them. Emma raised her eyebrow. Really? What happened next? Ethan nodded. I had a very meaningful morning. Emma appeared surprised but smiled. Breakfast, huh? That sounds like a step in the right direction. Ethan nodded, his smile growing brighter. Yeah, I think so. He looked at the car, then back at his wife. And you know what? I want to do more than that. Not just for them, but for others too. It feels like the right thing to do. Emma moved closer, placing her hand on his arm. Maybe you're starting to realize something important, she said, her voice soft. Ethan looked at her, his expression softening. Maybe I am.
They stood there for a moment, the silence between them filled with a new understanding. Ethan knew he had a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was heading in the right direction. He didn't know where his destination was, but he knew he had to keep moving forward.
Ethan wasn't sure why he had come here. He walked to the door, his steps hesitant but determined. He knocked, the wood creaking under his fingertips. A moment later, the door opened, and Mason's mother appeared, surprised. "Oh, Mr. Ethan," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I didn't expect to see you here so soon." Ethan smiled and nodded. "Yes, I know. Well, I wanted to talk to Mason for a bit, if that's all right." She looked over her shoulder and called out, "Mason, come here. Mr. Ethan is here." A moment later, Mason appeared, his eyes lighting up when he saw Ethan. He walked over, smiling brightly. "Hi, Uncle." Ethan smiled lightly, shaking his head. "It's not about the car breaking down this time." He paused, his expression turning more serious. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you for a bit. I've been thinking about what you said, about helping others, and I want to help you, help your family, do something meaningful." Mason looked at his mother, who nodded gently, her warm gaze mixed with a hint of caution. He turned back to Ethan, shrugging. "Well, we don't really need much, Uncle." Ethan stepped closer, his voice softer. "I understand, but I want to do this. Not because I owe you, but because I want to help. I want to make a difference." Mason thought for a moment, then looked back at his mother. She stepped forward, her expression a mix of curiosity and caution. "What exactly do you want to do, Mr. Ethan?" Ethan took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I think I can help fix up the house a bit. Nothing too big, but I think I can make it a little more comfortable for everyone here. You helped me without asking for anything in return, and this is my way of giving back." Mason's mother exchanged a look with her son, then turned back to Ethan. "Our family has never been the type to ask others for help," she said in a steady voice. "But if this means something to you, then it means something to us too. Sometimes someone just wants to help, that's all." Mason smiled and nodded. "Yeah, if you really want to help, I think we can make it work. The roof leaks and the kitchen needs some repairs." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight in his chest lighten a little. "Thank you. I promise I'll make this house more comfortable for everyone." Mason's mother nodded, a gentle smile appearing on her lips. "You're always welcome, Mr. Ethan, but don't feel like you have to do this. We're happy as we are." Ethan nodded, his gaze sincere. "I understand, and I promise I'm not doing this out of obligation." He looked into Mason's eyes. "You've shown me something I needed to learn, and I want to do this." Mason looked back at Ethan and smiled. "All right then, let's get started." Ethan turned back to the SUV, a sense of purpose filling his chest. He made a few calls, reaching out to people he knew in the construction business. He explained the situation and asked for their help. This situation made Ethan feel like he was using his resources for something truly meaningful. When he got home that evening, Emma was waiting for him in the living room. She looked up from her book, her expression softening as she saw his face. "Did you meet the boy?" she asked gently. Ethan nodded, offering a small but sincere smile. "Yes, and I'm going to help them. Really help them." Emma set the book down, stood up, and walked toward him, placing her hand on his arm, her eyes searching his face. "You're doing a good thing, Ethan. You don't need to do this for money, right?" Ethan met her gaze, his voice steady. "I know. It's about something else. Something I never knew I needed before." She smiled, squeezing his hand. "You're doing great, Ethan."
Ethan nodded, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. Maybe for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was doing something meaningful, something that made a difference. It wasn't just about fixing a flat tire or repairing a house, but about connection, about understanding the importance of being part of something bigger than himself. And looking into Emma's eyes, he knew this was just the beginning. Ethan pulled up in front of Mason's house, the tires crunching on the gravel. The warmth of the morning sun bathed the yard. Today was the first day he'd start the work. He brought a crew to assess the condition of the house, fixing the roof, plumbing, and a few other things that needed attention. Ethan took a deep breath as he got out of the car and walked toward the door. Before he could knock, the door swung open, and Mason stood there with a wide, bright smile. "Hey, Uncle Ethan! Ready to work?" Ethan chuckled lightly. "Maybe the heavy lifting is better left to the professionals, but I'll do my best." He glanced behind Mason and saw his mother standing there, a small smile on her face. "Come in," Mason said, opening the door wider. "Mom made coffee. I'm sure you need some." Ethan nodded and stepped inside. The smell of freshly brewed coffee greeted him, warming him in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. Amara, Mason's mother, greeted him with a polite smile from the kitchen counter. "Hello, Ethan. It's nice to see you again. You didn't have to come all the way here." She handed him a steaming cup of coffee. Ethan accepted it, smiling in gratitude. "I wanted to. I want to be part of this, not just give orders and walk away." Amara nodded, her eyes filled with appreciation. "We're very grateful to you. Please, make yourself at home." She glanced out the window, where the workers were beginning to unload their equipment. They seemed ready to begin. Ethan turned back to his crew, who were getting their tools ready. He nodded, then turned to Mason. "Show me around the house. Let's see where the most urgent repairs are." Mason shrugged, still smiling. "Well, our house isn't as big as yours." He winked playfully. Ethan smiled back. "I'll try to make it the best home it can be." Mason led Ethan around the house, pointing out the areas that needed the most attention. The roof had a few leaks, the plumbing in the kitchen was unstable, and some of the floors were worn down to the point of almost falling apart. Ethan took note of these in his mind, looking around the house. Though small, the house was filled with love. It wasn't just walls and a roof, it was a home filled with warmth. After they finished the tour, Mason led Ethan outside, where the workers had set up a temporary work area. A big, strong man named Mike waved Ethan over. "We're ready to get started, boss," Mike said. "The roof's the first thing we need to tackle." Ethan nodded. "All right, get started. If you need anything, just let me know." Mike gave him a thumbs up and headed over to the truck to grab the tools. Ethan turned back to Mason, who was looking at him with interest. "Not used to manual labor, huh?" Mason teased.
Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "Not really, but it feels good." Mason nodded, his expression growing more serious. "You know, what you're doing means a lot to my family." Ethan looked down at the boy, something catching in his throat. "I should be the one thanking you. You've helped me more than you realize." Mason tilted his head, curiosity in his eyes. "How's that?" Ethan hesitated, trying to find the right words. "You know, I've lived a life that was pretty detached, always focused on work, money, and things that didn't really matter. Meeting you reminded me of what truly matters: family, community, and helping others." Mason smiled softly, then looked into Ethan's eyes. "You're not that bad, you know? Most people just walk by when they see someone struggling."
Ethan felt a twinge of regret. He knew that not too long ago he might have been one of those people. He nodded, his voice lower now. I'm trying to change. Mason's mother stepped out onto the porch, hands on her hips, watching the workers as they went about their tasks. She smiled and said, I've never seen the house this lively before. Ethan returned her smile. We'll get everything fixed up just right. She nodded, her gaze soft. Thank you so much, Ethan. You don't know how much this means to us. Ethan looked over at Mason, who was gazing at his mother with affection. He turned back to Amara. This means a lot to me, too. It's not just about fixing a house. It's about doing something meaningful. Amara nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. We don't need anything fancy. Just a house to live in is enough.
We're fine, but help like this, it's really something special, Amara added. Ethan looked up at the roof, where Mike was already starting to hammer in nails. I'm not here to change your family's life, just to make things a little easier. Mason stepped forward and gently touched his mother's hand. We're so lucky, aren't we, Mom? Not everyone gets help like this. Amara nodded, her gaze focused on her son. That's right, and we're so grateful. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth spreading through him, not from the son, but from something else. It was strange how quickly he had bonded with this family. He had spent years building walls around himself, hiding behind success and money. But here, in this small house, he felt something different, something more genuine. The day went on, and the work proceeded steadily. Mason helped as much as he could, carrying tools and handing items to the workers. Ethan became more involved than he expected, holding ladders, passing nails, even hammering a few boards under Mike's guidance. Sweat poured down his back, his muscles ached, but he felt an odd sense of joy. It was a feeling he hadn't had in years, the satisfaction of working hard and seeing results. As the sun began to set, the work was finished. The roof had been repaired, and the kitchen plumbing was running smoothly. Mason ran into the house, his laughter ringing through the halls as he turned on the faucet. Amara approached Ethan, her eyes full of emotion. You've made such a big difference, Ethan. We don't know how to thank you. Ethan shook his head, smiling. You don't need to thank me. I should be the one thanking your family. He glanced at Mason, who was running over with a wide smile. Are you coming back tomorrow to help us? There's still so much to do. Ethan nodded, putting a hand on the boy's shoulder. Of course. I'll be here until it's done. Amara nodded approvingly, her gaze warm. The three of them stood there for a moment, feeling the significance of what they were doing. Ethan knew there was still a long way to go, not just fixing houses, but discovering his new self. But for now, he felt content and at peace. The next morning, Ethan arrived a little earlier. His SUV pulled up in front of Mason's house, the sound of the engine echoing in the fresh morning air.
Looked at the house, the roof was repaired, small changes that brought a sense of renewal. Mason was sitting on the porch, his face lighting up as he saw Ethan. Hey, you're back, Mason exclaimed, jumping up and running toward Ethan. The boy's excitement made Ethan smile. Yep, Ethan ruffled Mason's hair. I told you I'd be here until it's done. Mason nodded, his voice softening, a bit more serious now. My mom keeps saying we don't need that much help, but I think she's really happy you're helping. She just doesn't want to say it, but I know. Ethan glanced toward the door where Emma was standing, her eyes following them, a small smile on her face. He nodded at Mason, his voice just as soft as the boy's. I know. Sometimes it's hard to accept help, even when we really need it. I understand that feeling. Mason looked up at Ethan, his expression thoughtful. Yes, I understand. Ethan paused before continuing. I've spent most of my life trying to handle everything on my own, thinking I could do it all. But meeting you made me realize that there are things we need help with.
Mason smiled, his eyes lighting up. Amara stepped outside, inviting Ethan into the house. "Come in, Ethan. I've made breakfast. Please have something." The smell of scrambled eggs and toast filled the air, making Ethan feel warm. It was a simple meal, but one of the best he had ever had. Ethan sat down with Mason and his mother, sharing stories and laughter. He had never felt this way in his own home, despite all the comforts. They sat around the small kitchen table, and Emma brought the food out. She looked at Ethan, her gaze soft.
"No one has ever done anything like this for us. It's really moving." Ethan smiled, shaking his head. "It's nothing. You've all done so much for me, and I just want to do something in return." Amara smiled gently, her eyes slightly teary. She turned away for a moment before looking back at Ethan. "We don't need much, Ethan. Fixing the roof and the floors is more than enough." Ethan nodded, looking down at his plate. He took a deep breath and spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "I know, but I want to do more. I want to make things better for everyone. Make it more comfortable." Amara tilted her head, a curious look on her face. "What do you mean?" Ethan glanced at Mason, who was looking at him intently, then back to Amara. "I want to do more than just patch things up. I want to renovate the kitchen, fix the plumbing, even create a room of his own for Mason. I know it might be too much, but I want to do it." Amara blinked, her mouth open in surprise. "Ethan, that's really amazing." Mason's eyes widened, and his voice was full of excitement. "Really? You're going to do that for us?" Ethan nodded, looking at both of them. "Yeah, I want to do this. Not because I expect anything in return, but because I want to do something good, something meaningful." He looked directly into Amara's eyes. "You've given me something I didn't even know I needed." Amara swallowed, her eyes shimmering. She looked at Mason, who was bouncing in his seat. Then she turned back to Ethan. "I don't know what to say. We've always taken care of ourselves, but I can see you're serious." Ethan smiled. "I know, and you don't have to decide right now. Think it over carefully." Emma looked down at the table, her hands resting there. After a moment, she nodded. "All right, we'll think about it. But Ethan, we're so grateful." Mason grinned widely at Ethan. "I think it would be great to have a room that doesn't leak anymore. I also want a desk to study." Ethan chuckled and nodded. "That's the plan, Mason. We'll make sure you have a warm, dry room." Breakfast passed in laughter and joy. Mason talked about all the things he wanted in his new room, while Emma listened with a tender gaze. After breakfast, Ethan stepped outside to meet Mike and the crew. He explained the renovation plans in more detail. Mike nodded, his expression serious. "That's a big project, boss, but we'll give it our all." "It might take a few weeks," Ethan smiled. "That's fine. You want everything to be perfect." Mike gave him a thumbs up and got back to work. Ethan stood there for a moment, gazing at the house, where Mason and Emma were stepping out onto the porch. Emma waved, and their eyes met. There was something in her gaze that made Ethan's chest tighten. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, a connection he hadn't felt in years, not even in his own home. He turned back to the work, taking a deep breath. Today, they would continue repairing the plumbing and begin replacing the floors. But more than that, they were building something new, something far more meaningful. All day, Ethan worked tirelessly, carrying materials, balancing ladders, and hammering nails. He was exhausted, but immensely satisfied. At the end of the day, as the crew packed up, Amara walked over to Ethan. She looked at him, her expression serious. "Ethan, I've been thinking about your offer. We're truly grateful." Her voice was soft, yet filled with emotion. Ethan set down his tools and focused on her. "We're not used to accepting help from others, but I can see you're doing this from the heart." Ethan nodded. "I know, and I want to do more than just fix the house." He looked Amara in the eye. "I want to make it a real home for you all." Amara nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "We're so grateful, Ethan." Ethan smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. "Thank you, Amara. I promise, I'll make this house a place worth living in." She smiled back, a tear slipping down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away and smiled gently. "Mason is so excited about his new room." Ethan looked over at Mason, who was chatting enthusiastically with one of the workers, his face glowing with joy. "I think he's brought me a lot of joy too," Ethan said, his voice sincere. Amara nodded, her gaze meeting his. "You're a good man, Ethan. Maybe you didn't realize that before, but it's clear now." Ethan felt a lump in his throat and nodded. "I'm trying to be a better man." They stood there for a moment, watching the house. The sun began to set, painting the sky a golden hue. Ethan looked at the house, then back at Amara. This was just the beginning of something new, not just for her family, but for him as well. He had spent so much time on work, on material things, but now he had found something much more valuable. The next day, the repairs began. The sound of machinery echoed throughout the yard as the workers busied themselves tearing down old walls and fixing the floors. Ethan was involved in everything, from hauling materials to hammering nails. Sweat dripped from his brow, muscles ached, but he felt invigorated. He had found a new purpose in life. "This feels great, like a sense of pride." Ethan walked toward the porch where Amara stood, watching the workers. She turned when she saw him, a slight smile on her face. "Everything's going just as we hoped, right?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded. "Yes, and this is just the beginning." He looked at the workers, then at Mason, who was eagerly helping out, a smile lighting up his face. The positive energy filled the air. Emma looked at Ethan, her expression thoughtful. "You've done more than just fix the house, Ethan," she said softly. "You've given Mason hope." Ethan smiled gently, his gaze following Mason. "That boy is something special, and you've raised him so well." Amara lowered her head, her cheeks flushing with pride. "We've done our best." Ethan worked alongside the crew. He was clumsy at first, but with Mike's patience, he got the hang of it. Sweat poured down his face, muscles screamed in protest, but he felt alive. Meanwhile, Mason was always by his side, helping wherever he could. The boy was full of energy, making the atmosphere bright and cheerful. Ethan looked at him with admiration and affection. At the end of the day, when the work was finished, Ethan was tired but happy. He looked at what he had accomplished and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had found a new purpose, a sense of belonging. Mason didn't see the work as a burden. For him, it was an opportunity to be part of something meaningful, to help build something lasting. Suddenly, the boy ran up to Ethan, his face flushed from the sun, his eyes sparkling. "Hey, come see this!" He tugged on Ethan's sleeve, pulling him toward the back of the house, where a group of workers were installing new windows. The old ones had cracked, letting the cold air into the house during winter. Now they were being replaced with sturdy double-paned windows that would keep the house warmer in the colder months. "Isn't this awesome, Uncle?" Mason said, his eyes wide with excitement. "No more cold drafts coming through the house," Ethan said with a smile. Ethan smiled and nodded. "It's truly amazing, Mason. It will make a huge difference." Mason nodded, but his tone grew more serious. "You know, I never thought we'd have a house like this. My mom always did her best, but this really exceeds anything we ever hoped for." Ethan knelt down and placed a hand on Mason's shoulder. "You and your family deserve this, Mason. I'm just here to help."
Mason smiled, his eyes shining. "You're a good person, Uncle Ethan, no matter what you say."
Ethan swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in his throat. He nodded, gently rubbing the boy's shoulder. "Thank you. That means a lot to me." The day passed quickly. They all gathered for lunch on the porch. It was a simple meal, but warm, filled with laughter. Mason eagerly talked to Mike about the ongoing work. Ethan watched them, a sense of satisfaction swelling inside him. He had found a new purpose in life, a sense of belonging. Amara sat beside Ethan, her gaze serene. Ethan looked around, absorbing the warm atmosphere. He felt like he was truly part of a family, a feeling he hadn't had in years. It wasn't about money or power, it was about relationships, about being part of something bigger than himself. After lunch, the work resumed. Ethan and Amara stood on the porch, watching the workers. Mason ran around the yard, his laughter echoing through the air. Amara turned to Ethan, her expression thoughtful. "Ethan, if I were to ask why you're doing all of this, what would you say?" Her voice was gentle. Ethan paused, thinking for a moment before answering slowly. "I think I've realized I've missed something important. My whole life I was chasing success, thinking it was everything. But when I met Mason, when I saw him helping me without asking for anything in return, I realized life holds so much more meaning." Amara nodded, her gaze softening. "Sometimes we need the simple things to remind us of what really matters." Ethan smiled. "Exactly, and I think I needed that." They stood there for a while, listening to the chatter and laughter around them. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the sky. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling an unusual sense of peace. He knew he was on the right path. The workers began packing up, and Mike nodded to Ethan before heading out. Amara called Mason inside to wash up. Ethan stood alone in the yard, looking at the house. It wasn't finished, but the changes were clear. And not just the house, Ethan himself was changing. He felt a deep transformation within, a newfound understanding of what truly mattered in life. As he turned to leave, Mason came running out, his hair still damp, his face bright with joy. "Uncle, come back tomorrow, okay?" The boy tugged at Ethan's sleeve. Ethan smiled and nodded. "Of course, there's still so much to do." Mason grinned and ran inside. Ethan stood there for a moment, gazing at the house, at the yard, feeling the shift. He wasn't just building a house, he was building a new life for himself. He got in the truck and started the engine. The morning sunlight filtered through the windows, warm and soft. Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. He sat at the breakfast table, sipping his coffee, thinking about the day ahead. Today he would finish up the final tasks and have a small surprise for Mason's family. He knew that fixing the house wasn't just about building a place to live. It was about building relationships, a family. Ethan pulled up in front of Mason's house at 7 a.m., earlier than usual. The workers were already there, busy unloading their tools. He got out of the truck, stretched his shoulders, and looked at the house. The changes were incredible. Sparkling new windows, a solidly repaired roof, freshly painted walls. The house had completely transformed. Mason ran out from the house, his eyes lighting up when he saw Ethan. "Hi, Uncle. You're here early." Ethan smiled and nodded. "I want to make sure we finish everything on schedule today. Today's an important day." Mason tilted his head, curiosity in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Ethan simply smiled. "You'll see." Amara walked out, tying her hair up and greeting Ethan with a smile. "Good morning, Ethan. Would you like some coffee?" Ethan thanked her, and together they went inside. They sat around the kitchen table, steaming mugs of coffee in hand. Amara glanced around the house, her eyes filled with satisfaction. "We've come a long way," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, and you've contributed so much." Amara smiled. "You've helped us so much, Ethan." Ethan looked into her eyes. "No, it's you all who gave me the opportunity to help." They sat in silence for a while, soaking in the warmth of the house. Ethan knew that today they would finish the last of the work, and this house would truly become a home. This house isn't just wood and nails, it's a home for you and your mom. And to have been a part of making it better is something wonderful. Mason grinned, his gaze shifting from his mother to Ethan and back again. "Mom's amazing, isn't she, Uncle?" Amara smiled lightly, shaking her head. "Don't flatter me like that." Ethan smiled sincerely. "You're right. She really is incredible." Amara blushed slightly, looking away. "Thank you, Ethan, but we've all contributed to this." After breakfast, Ethan went outside with the crew. Today was the day to finish the final touches. He painted the house, finished the flooring in Mason's room, and installed a few more shelves. As he worked, his mind kept wandering to the surprise he had prepared. The sun began to set, and the work was nearly complete. The house now looked fresh and alive. Mike clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "We're done, boss. The house looks brand new." Ethan smiled, thanking Mike and the workers. He turned back to look at the house, feeling deeply satisfied. He had done more than just fix a house. He had given this family a real home. The evening sun bathed the house in golden light, warming the freshly painted walls. Ethan stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, admiring the result of their hard work. The house was transformed, brighter, cozier, more welcoming than ever. He remembered the early days when it was nothing but a wreck, but now it had become a true home. Amara stepped out holding a steaming cup of tea. She handed it to Ethan with a smile. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice full of emotion. "This house is truly ours now." Ethan accepted the tea, meeting her gaze. "I'm just happy to have been able to help." Mason came running out from the house, a ball in hand. He tossed it in the air, his laughter filling the air. "Uncle Ethan, I want to throw a party here." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "A party? That's a good idea." He bent down and ruffled Mason's hair. "We'll throw a big one." The three of them stood there, watching the house in the fading light of the evening. Together, they had created something beautiful. This house wasn't just a place to live, it was a place full of love, warmth, and beautiful memories. Ethan's heart swelled with happiness. He had found a new family, a new purpose in life. Mason ran up and hugged Ethan tightly, catching him by surprise, but Ethan quickly returned the embrace, his heart swelling with joy. "Thank you, Uncle Ethan," Mason whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Ethan gently patted Mason's back. "It's nothing, son." Amara stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. "Thank you, Ethan. You've changed our lives." Ethan looked into her eyes, his voice steady. "You've changed mine, more than you know." They stood there for a long while, watching the sunset. The golden light bathed the house, creating a beautiful scene. Ethan knew, in that moment, that he had found what he had been searching for all these years. Mason looked up, his eyes bright with curiosity. "So, what's next, Uncle Ethan?" Ethan smiled, glancing at Amara before turning back to Mason. "What do you want to do?" Mason thought for a moment, then said, "I want to be a builder, just like Mike." Ethan clapped him on the shoulder. "All right, I'll teach you." Amara smiled softly. "My son's quite talented." The sun continued to set, painting the sky in shades of red. Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of peace. He belonged here, with these people.
He had found his purpose. The next morning, as the sun began to rise, Ethan was already at the house. Mason ran out, his face beaming. "Uncle Ethan, the house is done!" Ethan smiled, ruffling the boy's hair. The two of them walked inside together. The house had truly transformed. Brighter, cozier, more inviting than ever. Mason dashed from room to room, his eyes wide with excitement. Ethan's heart overflowed with happiness. All right, let me see," Ethan said, following Mason inside. The inside was warm and welcoming. The newly installed hardwood floors made the house shine with cleanliness. The living room was painted a soft cream color, and the shelves were neatly arranged with little decorations from Amara, each piece a small reminder of memories and history. Mason led Ethan through each room, eagerly pointing out all the improvements. His room was the highlight. The ceiling had been repaired, no longer leaking. The new bed, complete with fresh, colorful linens, was neatly made. A small desk sat by the window. "Look, Uncle," Mason said, his eyes sparkling. "Now I have a place to do my homework without getting wet." Ethan smiled, his heart warming.
"You deserve this, Mason." Amara walked out from the kitchen, her eyes bright with excitement. "Is it really done?" she asked softly, almost in disbelief. Ethan nodded. "It's done, Amara, and it's yours." She stepped closer, tears welling in her eyes. "Ethan, I don't know what to say. You've given us more than just a house. You've given us hope, a future." Ethan took her hand in his. "No need to thank me, Amara. You and Mason have given me something I'd lost a long time ago. You've given me a purpose in life, a family." Amara wiped her tears, smiling through them. "You've become a part of our family, Ethan." Ethan nodded, his heart overflowing with emotion. "I'm so glad to be a part of it." They stepped out onto the porch where Mason was standing, looking out at the street. He turned around, his expression more serious than usual. "Mom, Ethan, I have something to say." Ethan raised an eyebrow, curious. Mason took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about my future. I want to help others, just like Uncle Ethan helped us." His eyes were filled with determination. Ethan placed his hand on Mason's shoulder. "You will do it, son. You've already started with the small things." Mason smiled, his eyes sparkling. "I know, but I want to do even more. I want to make a difference." Emma hugged Mason tightly. "You can do it, baby. I'm so proud of you." Ethan felt deeply moved. He knew he had planted a seed of hope in the boy's heart. He hadn't just built a house, he had helped build a brighter future for a family. Ethan shook his head and smiled. "No, Mason, you're the one who's changed me. You've reminded me of what truly matters in life." They stood there, under the morning sun, the air filled with a sense of peace. It wasn't just about the house, but the relationships, the bonds they had formed. Ethan knew this was only the beginning of a long journey. As the day went on, more neighbors stopped by. They brought food and congratulations. The house was filled with laughter, creating a warm atmosphere. Ethan leaned against the wall, watching Mason engage in an animated conversation with a neighborhood kid. The boy's eyes shone with joy. Amara walked over to Ethan, holding a glass of lemonade. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but full of emotion, "I don't know what to say. When you first came here, I didn't know what kind of person you were." Ethan smiled. "And now?" Amara looked at him, her eyes glistening. "Now I know you're a kind person." Amara smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "Now I know that you've become a part of our family, and we're so grateful to you." Ethan swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "I'm grateful too." They stood there, looking at each other, emotions rising. The party gradually came to an end, and the guests left. Ethan and Mason stood on the porch,
gazing at the sunset. Mason whispered, "Thank you, Uncle Ethan. You've changed our lives." Ethan ruffled the boy's hair. "It's nothing, son. But remember, this is just the beginning." The moonlight shone down, and the house looked more radiant than ever. Ethan felt an unusual peace. He had found a place where he truly belonged, a place full of love and warmth. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, not only for Mason and Amara, but for him as well. A chapter filled with hope, love, and connection. He knew that no matter what happened, they would always have each other. Ethan looked up at the night sky, the first stars beginning to appear. He glanced down at Mason and smiled. "Son, let's go inside. We've got a lot of dreams to chase." Mason nodded eagerly. "Yes, Uncle Ethan." Together, they walked into the house, the warmth surrounding them. Have you ever felt the desire to do something truly meaningful for your community? Ethan's story shows us that even the smallest action can create significant change. Share your own story about the good things you've done or wish to do. Together, let's build a better world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support our channel. Thank you. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to receive the latest updates. The stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any individual or organization. They are shared with the intention of spreading human values in life and have been rewritten with the support of AI. If there are any mistakes, kindly overlook them with understanding.